Well, it doesn't change that much, but obviously we were hoping to recover Max Meyer, but that's not been possible. So we're one further player down. But Joel Ward, who's been missing for a long period of time now, he returns. Scott Down returned, of course, before the last game. But we're still a lot of players from our intended first team down, and the bench once again will be made up largely of players from our under-23 squad.
Manchester City must bring back really special memories of last season.
Yeah, it was a wonderful game we had up there. I mean, obviously we were under a lot of pressure, but we counter-attacked well and were able to win the game, and of course that is quite a rare event for Man City to lose a game at home. So we're happy with that, but unfortunately you can't live on that, and now we've got to go and play them again. And I must say I fear them because they are such a good team.
It's a very open league, isn't it? A couple of wins and you're looking at near the top six, and then a couple of defeats, you're looking at the bottom six. So how do you assess the league this season?
Well, I think there are two really outstanding teams, which in actual fact are a long way basically from most of us. I guess teams like Leicester and Chelsea and Tottenham and even Arsenal and Man United, they'll protest that there isn't such a great gap between them and Liverpool and Manchester City, but I personally believe at this moment in time there is a gap even between those two teams and the ones I just mentioned, and of course the gap then down to the other teams in the league gets even greater. So when you're preparing a team to go and play Man City, it's a very difficult and daunting task because you know that they've got so many weapons that you're not certain you have the weapons in your armoury to deal with, but it's an honour and a pleasure to be going there, and I think that our players need to understand that that's going to be a hard day, and that we're going to be under the cosh for long periods of the game. Possession is going to be firmly in their favour. Our goal is going to come under enormous threat for long periods. It's still the reason we're in the Premier League. We're in the Premier League to play these teams, even though I would have to say there is a definite difference between the two teams.
Victor Camaras has left the club. Why, in your opinion, didn't it work out for him here?
It was nothing to do with him. I mean, he is a certain type of player. Obviously, his competition for places in the centre of the midfield was strong, and we have players who've been doing a very good job for us over the last 3 seasons in there, so it wasn't easy for him to break in, and of course he was trying to break in at a time when we were actually doing quite well. But he was a good professional, he worked very hard. It's no discredit to him that he didn't get into the team. It was quite simply choices, and I had players to choose, and unfortunately I chose others in front of him. But I wish him well now in Alaves, and I'm pretty certain that he'll do well there because he's undoubtedly a talented footballer. But he was confronted by players perhaps equally as talented and who had the shirt nailed down.
I'm told now that Bentaleb wants to come back to London, but do you feel you're well stocked in that area?
Well, a lot of players want to come back to London, don't they? You know, I mean, quite frankly, we are a London club, but we're not here just to be a home for any player who goes abroad and then decides he'd like to come back to London and can't get back to the club that sold him. I've got to be honest with you, Bentaleb's name has never once crossed anybody's lips at the club, so I'll leave that one to you with your speculation.
Christian Benteke, been linked with a move to Bordeaux on loan. Do you feel he needs a bit of a freshen up, or would you like to keep him here this January?
I just can't believe I'm being asked the question, if I'm perfectly honest. I really can't. I cannot believe in a serious press conference someone's going to suggest, where we have very few forwards anyway, a player that we're badly missing because he's been out injured, is we, the football club, or I, the coach or manager, are seriously considering loaning out what is potentially one of our best players to a club in the French division. I'd love to know where the stories come from, I really would, but I still find it a little bit hard to believe that, you know, when I ask a question, I do sometimes think, well, is there any point in asking that question, because I know the answer, but we have to sit here every week and answer these questions, which come from nowhere, but frankly, you know, it's not quite as ludicrous as Will Zaha on loan to Bayern Munich. It's about 10% less ludicrous than that.
It surprised me, but obviously it was in the papers the last few days, so I thought I'd ask.
Well, luckily, I can only say then I'm very happy for not reading newspapers like perhaps I should.
Is there an update on Cole Walker-Peters?
No, nothing about that. There was initial contact, I think, between the clubs, and the suggestion was made, which I were certainly behind. It would have been a good move for us, I think. But as far as I know, nothing's happening, and I've got no idea what Tottenham's intention with Cole Walker-Peters is.
Okay. All in all, looking at the squad over the next few weeks, is it still the right back and the left back situations, and potentially another striker? How do you assess it at the moment? I know you've got so many injuries.
Yes, I mean, going into the window, we were hoping for 2 strikers and full-back cover, both at right and left back. Potentially, maybe a bit of extra cover in midfield, maybe a different type of player to the type of player that Victor was, but someone who could take his place in the squad. We were looking to, research those possibilities, but of course nothing has happened so far other than the fact that we've managed to get Cenk Tosun on loan for Everton.
So still hopefully a few then?
It's open. I think we're in the same situation as a lot of clubs. There doesn't seem to be a lot of movement at the moment. I do follow the television. I don't read all the newspapers with all these stories, but I do follow the television. And it doesn't seem to me there's an awful lot going on other than the same stories being constantly repeated.
Thank you.
Roy, when you look back at last year's game at the Etihad, did that kind of sum up what your team give you in terms of the unity of purpose and everyone pulling for each other?
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of summing it up. I think that the last 2 seasons have certainly been marked in some ways by the fact that the team is constantly in situations where they can't seriously be expected to produce a result, have gone out and got a result, and a lot of it has been to do, I think, with the way they play for each other, the way they understand the game and their roles in the team. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of point looking back in time anyway, and certainly there's not a lot of point looking back in time and believing that because we did it last year, we're going to do it again. I think that would be very foolish. We need to go there once again in full humility and to understand that we're going to be confronted with a team which is really absolutely one of the very, very best in Europe, quite capable of winning the Champions League, enormous squad of players. When I look at their bench tomorrow and I compare it with our current bench, it's going to be a little bit frightening in terms of what they can do to change the game if they want to change it. But that's understandable. Man City are a team that are fighting to win the league and win the Champions League, and we're a team that are fighting once again to preserve the status that we've been lucky enough to preserve for the last 7 seasons. So we're looking forward to the task, we're looking forward to the challenge, but for me, last year's victory is no more than a pleasant memory, and certainly has no effect whatsoever on how I think about the game tomorrow, or how we will confront the game tomorrow.
I recall a game at Selhurst Park against Man City, it might be 2 seasons back now, when there was an injury late on. You sat with Pep for quite a while, just chatting while they were dealing with it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of respect between you two.
I like to think so. I mean, certainly I have a lot of respect for him. I can't speak for him, of course, but it would be almost impossible not to respect what he's achieved in the game and the enormous success he's had wherever he's been. And also I happen to appreciate the way his teams play and the way he handles himself in interviews, which of course is something I do watch and study because I find myself often in a similar position. It's always nice to see how other managers deal with those situations. I've got to say, I think he deals with them quite brilliantly. So it'll be a pleasure to meet him again, albeit that I don't think I'm going to get an awful lot of pleasure from what goes on from the first to the final whistle, but we'll see. It's nice to know that it's a possibility.
I gather that this might be the 95th Premier League game with Palace, which would actually take it beyond what you've done at Fulham and other clubs.
Yeah, I've worked there myself on it.
Given you, what happened at Fulham, what your achievements there, and that length of spell you had there, I mean, what do you look at this Crystal Palace spell as? Because, I mean, obviously where you are in the league now, you've taken them a huge distance from where they were.
Yeah, I'm proud of the time that I've been able to spend here. at the club. It's been a good 3 seasons in my opinion, and I do think we have achieved a lot because, you know, we've done it really on pretty much a budget which hasn't allowed us to go out and spend a lot of money to improve the squad or to strengthen the squad. You know, quite the opposite really. I think probably in the 3 seasons there's been no clubs that have actually spent as little money as we have in terms of transfers. So I'm pleased with what this group of players has achieved because I inherited the bulk of them. You know, even today it's a very small percentage of players that have come into the club during my time as manager. I'm still working with players who've been brought in the past, and luckily been brought in the past because there's some very good ones amongst them. But I'm proud of it. I was very proud of the Fulham time, of course. The Fulham time will always, I suppose, be to some extent elevated above Crystal Palace simply because we got to the final of a European Cup competition, which really was above and beyond what people could expect of us. But I honestly believe that the challenge that I've faced here is equally, or could be certainly compared to the challenge at Fulham. And I think the 2 jobs in many ways have been parallel jobs. And I'm privileged to have worked at 2 such good football clubs in London, which is always helpful. And I'm hoping that the 95 games will go at least and get me past the century mark. That's the next goal. 5 more to go after this one.
Okay.
Can I just ask about Cenk Tosun as well? How's he looked to you in training? Is he possibly ready to start?
Yeah, I think obviously he's ready to start because he's physically fit to start, but I still think he probably needs more time with us, and he needs more time, you know, as close, if you like, to a starting position as he is with us, which he's not necessarily been in that situation with Everton. So he's still, if you like, finding his feet here, moving from Liverpool, settling his family, finding a house, all of those type of things that people have to do when they move. And you can't expect them to suddenly just snap their fingers and it all to fall into place. But he's certainly working at it, and he's got a smile on his face, and he seems happy to be here. And, you know, we're hoping he's going to be able to do the job that we have brought him in to do.
Thank you. Okay, Stanley at the back. BBC.
Hi, Stanley.
Hi, Roy. The Africa Cup of Nations organisers have changed the timetable for the tournament from the European summer to January once again, which means next season, this time, you will be without 4 of your players. What do you make of that change? And secondly, some have suggested that some managers have found it difficult perhaps to sign African players because of this technicality. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, is it definite that it's been moved, or is it a suggestion?
It is definitely.
It is definite, is it?
They announced it yesterday.
Yeah. Well, that will do us a lot of harm, and it will do a lot of other clubs a lot of harm as well. There's no question of that. Whether or not this will have an effect upon African players being signed, I guess the answer to that might well be yes too. Maybe a bit less so in the clubs that carry a very big squad of players, you know, the Man Cities, the Liverpools, the Man Uniteds, Chelseas of the world that carry a very big squad of senior recognised players, perhaps a bit less so than in clubs like ourselves. But unfortunately, a lot of the African players who do come here, they come to clubs like our own. So I don't welcome the move, of course, because it's going to make life very, very difficult for a 5 to 6 week period. We're going to have to play a lot of games without some of our best players. And I don't quite know at this moment in time, because I've not discussed it with the club hierarchy, what their thoughts on the subject would be, because we're finding it very difficult at the moment to deal with 7 or 8 players missing from our first team squad. If we're going to miss 4, definitely, not through injury, but because they've got to go to the African Cup of Nations, you add probably the sort of injuries that you're bound to occur by the time January 2021 comes around. We're going to be once again in this situation for maybe as many as 6 games, which is a substantial part of a 38 league game season. You know, those 6 games can be the difference between survival or relegation. So it'll be something very seriously, I think, for our hierarchy to think about, and it's going to put the players, African players, at Premier League clubs because they want to be at Premier League clubs. They want to be here where they earn a lot of money and where they think their talent is being well showcased. It's going to put them in a very invidious position because it means they're going to have to leave their club in a situation where the club's very unhappy to see them go and is even lamenting the fact that you're going to the African Cup of Nations may cost us our place in the league. But on the other hand, of course, their national team is calling them and they want to play for their national team because certainly the African players that we have at the club are proud to play for their African clubs. So that's my view on the subject for what it's worth, but it won't make any difference if we are being confronted with a fait accompli.
Thanks, Sammy. Okay, that's the end of the broadcast section. Thank you.